part of the reason that there are so many products out there that have so much sugar is that's what a lot of people are accustomed to. That's what they've grown up with. The second thing that's going on is dishonesty.
Welcome to the Clean Body Podcast. I'm Lauren Kelly, a certified nutrition therapist and soon-to-be specialized holistic cancer coach with a certification in cancer biology from UC Berkeley. I am so grateful that you're here. This podcast introduces you to the souls and brains behind some of the cleanest food, beverage, and lifestyle products on the market. Because what you put on, in, and around your body matters. From cookies, bread, and mushroom superfoods, to adaptogenic lozenges, clean medicines, organic mattresses, and fluoride-free toothpastes, we'll explore how the brands came to be, how scientific studies drove decisions about ingredients and materials, and most importantly, how the products support all the physical and mental microscopic miracles that occur in your body every minute of every day. Thank you for being here. Let's get this started. Hello. Welcome to episode 2 of the Clean Body Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Kelly, and as always, thank you so much for being here. If you are watching this on YouTube, please disregard my wet and frizzy hair. I decided to jump in my pool right before coming up to record this, but I am so excited for today's episode. We are talking to the co-founder of Bright Bars, Brenden Schaefer. This was one of the most requested episodes I had when I asked people on Instagram what they were most interested in learning about, and that makes sense because we all need healthy on-the-go foods. But I do have some bad news. Most of the on-the-go foods that we eat, energy bars, protein bars, are actually putting a lot more stress on our body than doing it any good. So many of them that we pick up off grocery store shelves are packed with hidden sugars that spike our blood sugar and increase food cravings. They have pro-inflammatory oils that cause inflammation and digestive issues. They have food preservatives and additives, many of which can have serious side effects. And even if they do contain protein powders like soy protein isolate, they're so processed that the cons far outweigh the pros. And if eaten in excess, they can really impact our health, our immunity, our performance, our gut health, which you know I'm all about. So we can have healthy on-the-go food. We just need to see through the BS on the food and nutrition label. So as I mentioned, today I'm talking to the driving force behind Bright Foods, a brand committed to creating convenient, nutrient-dense, and clean food made with whole vegetables, fruits, nuts, and superfoods. Brenden started the company from his garage in 2016 and is motivated by his desire to revolutionize the world of packaged foods. Thank goodness. In this episode, we dig into everything from ingredients that you should steer clear of, the science that supported decisions for Bright Foods, why other protein and energy bar brands aren't doing the right thing and only using good-for-you ingredients, and how Bright Bars biologically helps fuel your activity through the day. It's an awesome conversation. Brendan's passion for the clean living movement is contagious. And if you like the episode, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes in the coming weeks. But without further ado, welcome to the Clean Body Podcast, Brenden.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So I would love, before we jump into all things Bright Bars, to just hear your personal journey with health and wellness, and maybe, what brought you to starting Bright Bars.
Yeah. So I first got into health and wellness in college. I started running and I fell in love with the way that I felt. Then I got into swimming, then yoga, and I wanted more of that energy and that feeling of being alive, that tingly feeling that you get right after a workout. I always call it nature's drug. And I also really love food. And I thought about being a chef for a time. So I had this one part of me that was looking at food through the lens of what's healthy, what makes me feel good, and another part that was looking at it and saying, what's interesting, what's new, different, what's delicious, and takes me on a journey when I eat it, makes me forget where I am and just escape into pure sensory delight. And this love of both of those things continued. running, swimming, yoga, and later cycling became fixtures of my life, really something that I needed and something I still do every week. And in the last few years, I've also become a devoted meditator. And it's really at the intersection of those things that I've built my career. This love of all those activities that I mentioned, along with this love of food. Um, and when it came to um, uh, Bright Foods, I'd been working in the food industry for about 9 years. Um, and I stopped eating protein bars about 10 years ago.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. They didn't leave me feeling good, and they were packed with tons of sugar. And then I discovered this brand in the refrigerated bar set um, called Perfect Bar, and I ate that for a while
Mm-hmm.
until I turned it over and I realized that it had just as much sugar as a Cliff Bar. Um, and I had spent a lot of time in Sprouts and Whole Foods demoing a prior product line that I had launched. And I heard all these people who had similar experiences to mine. The refrigerated bar space is growing so fast and it has so few competitors that I saw an opportunity to really catapult into the next generation of bars. So I took the leap and was very fortunate to launch with Whole Foods. And then now our products are national in Sprouts as well. But there's a lot of stuff in between that initial decision where I am today, which I know we'll get into.
Yeah, I mean, Sprouts is where I buy mine. That's where I discovered the brand. But I love that you said food for you was this sensory experience, and you were looking for almost this like culinary adventure. I think that's so cool. And life is just a compilation of experiences. Some we remember, some we don't. But I could probably dive into the dichotomy of energy and protein bars forever because I just remember being little and watching my mom drink V8 juices and eat Cliff bars. And I don't even remember what the other ones were called. And now looking back, like, oh, I just feel so bad that she was putting that all in her body and she thought she
Mm,
was doing herself a favor, you know? And I remember as a teenager working out, I swam as well. I hate cycling. So good for you. I cannot get into it. But after, swim lessons or swim tournaments when I just spent like 2 hours exerting my energy and body, the first thing you put into it is a Cliff Bar, and there's just like no real nutrition in there. It is all just sugar. What is kind of your take on that? Like, what is it? It's so confusing. And like you said, something like Perfect Bars, it looks healthy. The packaging looks healthy and it sounds healthy. And then if you flip it over, it's definitely got some downsides to it. So, what do you think? Why are healthy bar producers not actually making it as healthy as they could?
It is, I think there are two main reasons. One of them is the way that people actually eat today in the United States. And the second is dishonesty. And let's talk about both of those in turn. So, one of my lessons, having been in food now for almost 15 years, is that food is evolutionary rather than revolutionary. What I mean by that is we all grow up eating certain foods, and what tastes good versus what tastes bad gets imprinted on us at some level. And in some cases, people will make a drastic shift because they have to. They have a health emergency. Their eyes are open and they realize, okay, I've been eating really, really unhealthily, and so I need to start to shift to something that's more sustainable. For other people who are already eating, pretty healthily, even your mom, right? V8 juice, there are far worse things you could be having. Cliff
Back
Bar.
then, they had a lot more sugar, I'm pretty sure,
Oh,
but
okay,
and
okay,
preservatives, but yeah,
good point.
now they're much better. We
Good
won't
point.
we won't throw them under the bus right now.
But I mean, it's there are certain foods that we find comfortable, and when you're on the other side of of the equation, meaning you're not the one who's eating, but you're the one who's making food. It's very tempting to move the pendulum really, really far over and say, okay, well, we're going to make something that's ultra pure and ultra clean, and oftentimes it means ultra expensive. And the reality is, with consumer behavior, you want to nudge. You don't want to move people too far too quickly, because you're unable then to deliver on what food is supposed to do for most people, which is make them feel happy, uh, give them a really pleasant experience, and give them something that is good for them. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying, I think part of the reason that there are so many products out there that have so much sugar is that's what a lot of people are accustomed to. That's what they've grown up with. And the uh, the goal for a lot of food manufacturers has been to say, okay, well, instead of putting in 21 grams of cane sugar, I'm going to do 18 grams of honey and 3 grams of cane sugar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
at least uh, from the perspective of someone who's reading a label. Once you start to get educated about nutrition, you realize that's actually still really bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the first thing that's going on. The second thing that's going on is dishonesty. And the reality is, most marketing is lies. There's a very famous uh, kind of popular philosopher named Seth Godin who writes a lot about marketing. And he said that marketers are liars. And there are so many examples in the food industry of that being true. And it's because marketers are trying to get to the sweet spot where they will tell you that you're eating something. We call it permissible indulgence. I'm eating something which tastes amazing, and I'm going to be able to rationalize it away so I can still feel good about myself at the end of the day. And I think that there are ways to enter into the food industry. There are ways to bring a product into the market that taste delicious, that leave somebody feeling really, really good, and that are not lies. um, but it's a very difficult thing, and the part of the reason why the companies that are doing this are all startups is because the big food companies aren't really capable of creating those kinds of innovations. So that's probably a much bigger answer than you were looking for, but that's why I think there is that conflict. That's why there is that contradiction in so much packaged food that's on the shelves today.
I could say so many things to all of that. First of all, the evolution of consumerism is a great point, as well as the evolution of science. So, like I was saying before, some of those brands in the 80s and the 90s, they didn't necessarily know what they were doing was wrong. It was that the science was bad and what we were being told was healthy was bad, like all those low fat products. Fat is the devil. Well, some kinds of fat, yeah, absolutely the devil. But however, healthy fats are essential to human life. And then on top of that, like you were saying with disloyalty, I think that's, a reason that I started this podcast because consumerism is changing once again. Buyers want honesty, and I think they're getting smarter. They're not just trusting a label on the front that says, like, chocolate chips, low sugar, good for you, like whatever. They're actually, a lot of people are really looking into it and wanting transparency behind what ingredients are in this food and how is it going to affect my body, which is why it's so important for us to use our money and our wallets to support companies like Bright who are doing it right. Because we need to keep you in business so that we can fuel our bodies with the best ingredients. But speaking of marketers being liars, which is so funny because in my everyday job, I work somewhat in marketing, but my company is all about authenticity and transparency. So I'm safe there. But what are some of the brand values and missions that you founded Bright on that you try to embed into the DNA of everything you do?
Yeah. We first and foremost believe in yeah, plant-based, and we're not um, we're not zealots. Again, recognizing that life is busy, we're all trying to balance a ton of things, and the goal is not to you know be super strict about eating only plants and nothing else, and no dairy and no eggs. But our mission is to make it easy and delicious to eat plant-based whole food when you're strapped for time. And the when it came to designing this product, we uh, laid out that pillar. We laid out the pillar of as fresh as possible. So that's why our product is refrigerated. We're not baking it. We're not loading it up with a million preservatives so it can sit on a shelf for a couple of years. Um, the other pillar is deliciousness, and we want we don't want there to be a sacrifice when it comes to eating something that is good for you. And the final pillar is nutrient dense. Well, I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but uh, we took great pains to make sure that what we were uh, creating was going to check some really important boxes. The first is to make sure we're offering a complete plant protein.
Couple definitions here for clarification. A complete plant protein is a protein food that comes from a plant source that contains all of the essential amino acids our body needs but can't produce itself. Amino acids are the building blocks of life. They're used by every single cell, and there are 9 amino acids we must get through our diet because our body can't produce them. In just 1 second, we're also going to talk about a low glycemic food. A low glycemic food minimizes spikes in your blood sugar and insulin levels. It stops that energy crash that sometimes we feel after a really sugary or high carb meal. Let's get back to the interview.
If you want to help people eat plant-based, you have to make sure that they're not sacrificing anything, obviously first on the taste side, but also then on the nutrition side. And the vast majority of plant-based products out there don't have complete proteins. The second piece was we wanted to make sure that we had lots of fiber. So all of our products actually have 8 to 10 grams of fiber. The third piece was low sugar. So again, per our discussion a moment ago, most of the products out on the market are really candy bars in disguise. And we took a very hard stance and said, okay, let's cut sugar in half. How do we do that? How do we get it to a place where you're going to have a low glycemic index product? It tastes great, and you can feel good knowing that you're not bombing your system out with a bunch of unnecessary sugar. And then on top of that, we said, okay, let's also put in greens and adaptogens. So you're going to get some kale and some spinach in there, some reishi and some maca, so that you're giving your body a little bit of extra defense and a little bit of extra energy. All in a package that you can rip open from the fridge and then eat. So
It,
yeah,
no, that's great. Adaptogens are so hot right now. It's incredible. I think there's 4 brands that I'm speaking to that all in some way, shape, or form are using adaptogens right now.
mm,
And some consumers think this is a new trend, a new science. It's not. It's old wisdom that dates
mm,
back. I don't even know how long, billions of years probably. But it's just really fascinating to just hear how adaptogens and incorporating that into packaged foods that are better for you is becoming such a trend.
yeah, adaptogens are exploding, and there's still not a lot of consumer knowledge about what they are and what they do. But I think
Mhm.
the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to change.
Yeah, they're incredible the way that they just work with the individual person's unique genetic makeup and help balance out hormones and give you whatever it is you need. If you're feeling stressed, anxious, it's just like is this magical superfood that balances you out. But I want to go back a little bit and focus on plant powered nutrition. Why was this a tent pole for Bright Foods?
A large part of it is my own belief and my own set of experiences around uh, how how I feel after eating plant-based food versus not plant-based food. Um, I'm an intuitive eater. I'm not. I've never jumped on different diet bandwagons. I've never done keto. I've never
Never?
done paleo. Never. I know it's kind of rare, and I think a big part of that is because um, I've always loved exercising so much, and um, I have found over time that by listening to my body, I would get pretty good signals about what felt good and what gave me energy versus what didn't. Um, and over time, what I discovered was uh, eating dairy was really not good for me. Um, I don't particularly like eating eggs. I ate them for a long, long time. I started to
Mm.
realize that just for me, I feel kind of heavy afterwards. And uh, meat, I still eat, but I found that in general, when I was eating more plants, my body just seemed to function better. And I'm putting myself through the ringer sometimes, and nonetheless, yeah, it's just kind of a better experience. Now, what I'll do there is I'll stop and say, okay, that's my experience. Is this also an experience that other people are having? Because I'm not just because this is what I'm having, seeing day to day doesn't mean that 98% of other people are. But I started to, after doing some research, realize, yeah, a lot of other people feel the same way,
Mm.
and plant based is growing, and there's no really good option out there for a fresh plant based, high protein, high fiber, uh, greens plus adaptogens product.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was really the combination of my own personal need plus seeing, okay, I'm not alone. There are a lot of other people who are looking for this too.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with dairy and eggs. So it goes back to everybody's body is different and you do have to intuitively eat and figure out what works for your own genetic makeup and your own digestive system. And I do believe quite a bit in like eating like your ancestors. My family was, from Austria and they were Irish farmers and Scotland and they ate all kinds of dairy and bread. And so I have no problems with those things.
Yeah.
However, even if you don't have a problem with dairy and milk and ethically or, whatever your belief systems are, you do eat those food sources, you can go no wrong having more plant based foods in your life.
Mm,
Nobody is going to have a downfall from eating more plant based foods. So enjoy those foods if your body can handle them, but make sure you're also getting as much plant based at every single meal as you can because the power of vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds, it's so crucial to our overall
mm,
health. So I think
yes,
it's
well
great that
said.
Bright Bars kind of packages that because it makes it a lot easier to make sure that you are getting some, I think cooking is really overwhelming for some people and
Mhm.
making sure that you have a healthy meal on the go. Also, people are so busy right now in lockdown with kids at home. Like the last thing you have time to do is think about like, okay, how am I going to open up this coconut yogurt and what am I going to put into it so that I'm getting lots of nutrition, and Bright Bars kind of takes away that quandary for you. But I would love for you to talk a little bit more to intuitive eating. I'm
Yeah.
sure that a lot of people listening, it's still a journey that I'm on. And even though I know things about my body, I still don't always listen to it because,
Hmm.
gosh darn it, I want that pizza. I'd rather be having pizza.
Yeah.
I had pizza at my wedding, so that's how much I love
Awesome.
pizza.
Awesome. I love pizza too.
um, yeah, yes, much less expensive. Guess you didn't hear that. But how for people listening, what advice would you give them for cultivating more of an intuitive eating lifestyle
Yeah.
habit?
So I, my personal philosophy is that um, there are foods that are good for your body and there are foods that are good for your soul.
Hmm.
Sometimes those overlap and sometimes they don't. but you need both. I really do love pizza. I eat pizza at least once every 2 weeks. Um, and going back to my love of all things culinary, I love going to new restaurants that are doing really interesting things with food. And my approach, generally speaking, is I try to be pretty healthy during the week. And then on the weekends, that's my time to explore and indulge and feed the other side. And for me, there's a balance. It's probably 70-30 when I'm being good. 70% of the time eating uh, things that, again, are nourishing, providing sustenance, providing good energy. 30% of the time eating things that, man, they taste so great. and
But you can feel it later. You can feel it, can't
and
you?
and that's exact yes, 1,000%. And I think this is where the intuitive eating part comes in. I noticed after a weekend of indulging, after eating too much pizza, that the next day I feel pretty inflamed. I feel pretty sluggish. It's hard for me to get going, and that's a signal to me that okay, I'm in a little bit of debt, if you want to call it that, and I kind of need to get back up to my baseline. So I've learned over time, all right, maybe I'll have a green juice that morning. Maybe I'll have an apple with some peanut butter. I've got maybe I'll have some pretzels sometimes. But I've sort of started to figure out, okay, this is these are some things I can go to when I need to tip the scales back to a place that's a little bit more balanced. And for me, that's an approach that works. I think exercise is also, for me, a really integral component, as you gathered, in helping to kind of purge when I've got stuff that's sitting around in my system that needs to just be sweated out. But I think I I find it pretty difficult to follow really really stringent rules around food. And I've tried that in the past couple times. Again, none of those diets, but at a certain point in time, that other part of me that wants the food that's good for my soul kind of starts yelling. And so this is the system where I'm kind of I've got some loose guardrails, but I'm following what I need and what I want at the time, and then recognizing that it's gonna it's gonna shift. It's gonna go like this, and over time, it balances out, and it works.
Yeah, it is so much about balance, and you really have to remove that shame. You don't need to feel shameful if you eat an indulgent meal or you have a donut, which, by the way, if I take one bite of a donut, I feel it within 5 minutes. I just
Wow.
eat so little sugar that if I'm ever having digestive issues, need to get things moving, have some sugar, and I'll be good to go. That's probably TMI. Very open about these things.
Gut health.
But yeah, gut health. But yeah, you got to remove some shame and find the balance. And as you said, if you're going to have an indulgent meal, you just need to know that the next meal or the next day, you need to support your body and detoxification and just boosting, antioxidants that you're getting through your food. So have extra servings of broccoli. Have some extra citrus, have a
Hmm.
green juice, and just get those nutrients in there because your body is working so hard for you to process what you put in there. And it's a little harder when it's not the best types of food. So you just need to give it a little support to get back to a balanced state. So I think that was a great explanation. Going back to Bright Bars, something that is unique is that you guys really are committed to using organic. What were some of the decisions or some of the science or things you learned that drove that decision?
A, 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 a big part of it is simply that whenever it's feasible for us financially, we will use organic ingredients. And part of that goes back to a love of the outdoors and sustainable farming and trying to support organic farmers who are out there. It's being an organic farmer is hard. You have
Mm-hmm.
much lower yield than conventional farmers. You're really at the whim of seasons much more, and uh, without the added tools that you get from conventional farming, you just live with a higher degree of risk. Uh, and so, to the extent that we can support people who are, again, supporting the land and doing, helping to nurture the earth, we always want to do it. The tricky thing with organic from an entrepreneur's perspective simply is cost. Because I had launched an organic food brand once before, and what I realized is you have to charge a lot more on shelf, and it's very difficult to reach a broad group of people. If you're charging $3.99 a bar, you're already narrowing down to really only a small group of people who can afford to pay that every day. I wouldn't pay $3.99 for something that I wanted to eat every day, or even 4 times a week. So the way that I look at it now is we use an organic complete protein. We use organic coconut nectar. We use organic agave nectar. We use non-GMO for everything else. That to me is um, kind of that's the compromise that we make in order to be able to price something that in a way that's affordable, but also, again, kind of do our small part to live our values.
Mm-hmm. And I actually had a friend recently ask me, is organic food really that much better for you, or is it just a marketing ploy, essentially? Short answer, yes, it is better for you. Long answer, I'm going to let you take over because you were shaking your head yes. So, in your experience and from your education and what you've learned through the years, why is organic more nutritious and beneficial for people to commit to?
I'm actually curious to hear your take on it. Why did you say that to your friend?
Well, I don't think that all foods need to be organic. It really depends on the amount of pesticides that are used on the food. Berries, for example, can have up to, I think, like 40 different pesticides, which are chemical compounds, and not all chemicals are bad. Water and oxygen is a chemical, but they are man made chemical compounds that I don't think initially were rolled out into the marketplace to cause chronic illness and inflammation and damage our gut health. But the science was not good behind what those compounds do. And that is essentially what they do. We consume these chemical compounds that are not natural to our body, that our body doesn't know how to break down and how to use it. And so often they get stored in our fat and they accumulate and they cause inflammation. And inflammation is a root cause of so many chronic illnesses that we see rising in our country right now. And so if you can find some of your budget to spend, there's I think, clean 13 maybe and dirty 12. I can't
Dirty
remember the
dozen.
exact numbers. Yeah, dirty
Yeah.
dozen. Thank you. And so if you can find the money within your budget to at least buy those organic, you're doing your body a favor. You can't do everything perfect. None of us have all the money in the world to only spend on food, except that's all I spend my money on. But you can make little changes in your daily and weekly lifestyle that will accumulate over time to optimizing your health, so that it's more expensive at the grocery store that one time that you go, but you might be saving yourself a whole lot of healthcare bills later in life. So that's my diatribe. Thanks
I,
for allowing me to go on it.
I think you said it beautifully. I add.
All right. Well, good. So speaking then of farmers, what are some of how do you gauge, what are your requirements of local farms that you do work with?
So the short answer is, again, we source organic whenever possible, um, and we source as close to California or in California whenever possible. We've been really fortunate, or I should say, I am really fortunate to live here because we are near the Salad Bowl, um, and so there's an amazing array of farmers who you can get stuff from within a day. It comes packed on ice and like you're done. Uh, there are certain times where you can't get ingredients because they simply aren't grown here. So not for Bright Bar, but for the product that I launched before, I'll give you two examples: pineapple and mango. Those were products that they they simply just don't grow at this latitude. So if you want pineapple, you're going to Sri Lanka or you're going to the Philippines. If you want mango, odds are you're going to Mexico most of the time. Um, that's just the reality of that supply chain. But our goal is always to use the highest standard products that we can. Um, we inspect every certificate of analysis that comes through to make sure that there's no weird stuff in there. Because again, we just want food, and then um, yeah, from there it really comes down to trying to support good people.
Mm-hmm.
To go an advisor mindset. If you have the choice between two suppliers, choose the one who's more comfortable to work with. And I've always taken that to heart.
Huh, that's an interesting, more comfortable to work with. How do you define comfortable?
I so this is a relatively new thing for me in the past few years. Um, Life goes by pretty fast, and
Mm-hmm.
I really want to work with people who I enjoy. Um, I want to work with people who are knowledgeable, who are substance, over flash. I want to work with people who are humble, and I want to work with people who are honest. And I find if you think about the course of your day, and if you were to sort of chart your mood, there uh, are there are great kind of peaks that come from interacting with people who make you laugh, who teach you things, who, as one friend said, with. And then the opposite is true when you're dealing with people who are really antagonistic, who are trying to take advantage of you, who you're always sort of second guessing yourself. Not only in the moment does that feel bad, but there are aftershocks from that because later in the day, you'll think about that conversation. You'll wonder, how is this going to unfold? And uh, what I've found over time is whenever there's a choice, I'm going to optimize for that first experience. I really I've had enough experiences now with great people and with people who were not great. Uh, and business is really, at the end of the day, a team sport, and it's about partnership. And I would rather build a network of partners who I really enjoy working with, who I really think are good people.
Yeah, that can be so hard sometimes, especially if you have people that you don't always choose certain people in your life. And if they are draining and they do take advantage or what have you, it can be really difficult to create those boundaries and those barriers. But it all comes back to living an intuitive and a healthy life
Mhm.
because those experiences of stress and anxiety, they impact your health and your hormone balance as well, which just leads right back to inflammation, leads right back to leaky gut, and all of that manifests in a variety of ways, including chronic illnesses. So I love that. I think that's a really wonderful um, life motto to have for the decisions that you make. I'm curious what the life cycle is of a Bright Bar, because like you've mentioned, you have kale in it, you have spinach in it, but it really doesn't change the flavor whatsoever.
Mhm.
And you put a lot of time into figuring out how you remove some of the sugar, but still have a good tasting product. So without giving away, of course, your trade secrets,
Right.
what is the life cycle? How do you produce that bar? And how long can it stay in the refrigerator or on the shelf?
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, let me think of how to answer this uh, in a way that does
I think
protect
I
those
just
other
asked
two
you like 8,000 questions too. So if you could answer them all in one, that would be great.
things. The uh, the short answer is I can't tell you, or else I'd have to kill you. The slightly longer answer is we worked with a really brilliant food scientist to figure out how to do these things uh, because they are hard, um, and they're um, it gets even harder when you're dealing with a product that uh, is refrigerated. And to be clear, our bars they last in the refrigerator for 10 months. You can take them on the go for a year. And part of what we had to figure out was how do we get in all of these ingredients that we want while keeping enzymatic oxidation at bay. Because when you're dealing with any sort of a food system and you're chopping ingredients up and you're putting them together, um, you you have enzymes which are going to be set free, and you have oxygen which is going to be set free. And those two things are the enemies of good taste, and they're the enemies of shelf life.
I'm going to try to break down enzymatic oxidation as quickly as I can right here. Enzymes are a substance or protein that biologically catalyzes a chemical response in a living organism, like a human body, a fruit, or a vegetable. Oxidizing is what happens when oxygen is combined with a compound like an enzyme. So when Brenden is referring to enzymatic oxidation, he's referring to a living organism, like a fruit or a vegetable, being modified and coming into new contact with oxygen. That oxygen is then combining with the enzyme, which is causing the fruit or vegetable to brown. So take, for example, picking an apple off of a tree. The apple is completely fine on that tree, but as soon as you pick it off and you put it on your counter, it starts to brown. That is enzymatic oxidation at play.
And so uh, the other piece of it, I should say, is even when you keep those things at bay, over time, flavors change and flavors morph. There's another piece of it too, which is even when you make something that tastes great in your kitchen, when you actually go to produce it, it changes dramatically. That's one of the hardest things about food. So this food scientist um, essentially ran lots and lots of experiments to figure out how to get the flavor right, how to get the texture right, how to make sure that uh, that flavor and that texture held up over the course of shelf life. How then to produce that when we're going to run pretty shortly here, and we'll go run about 60,000 bars. So how do you make sure that those 60,000 bars all taste the same and all have the same attributes? And so for each of those ingredients, the answer is a little bit different. When it comes to keeping sugar low, well, part of it is what's the sweetener that you're using? Who's the supplier that sweetener is coming from? Because you wouldn't think it, but you can get the same exact ingredient from two suppliers, and they'll be drastically different. Uh,
Is that
where
a cause of transporting and like heating and cooling, or what, or how it was like created, what soil it was grown in? Are those all factors in that?
all factors, where
Mhm.
it's sourced from, how it's grown, how it's been processed, how old it is at the time that you get it, all of those things come into to play. And so a really great food scientist will get all of these different ingredients, line them up side by side, and then this is where things again get tricky. You may have two coconut nectars, which you taste in the raw, and you say, "Oh, this one's sweet and caramelly and luscious," and this other one tastes kind of bland and one-dimensional. And then you put them actually into the product, and you go, "Oh wow, the bland one-dimensional one is brilliant,"
Hmm.
and the first one tastes terrible, and there's no way to know it, really, having gone through so much product development now, the only way to do it is to do it and then to taste it. Um,
So how much bad stuff have you tasted?
um, so much, so much, so much.
Well, that's great. And that's, I mean, that we were getting a little science nerdy there with the enzymes and the
Yeah.
oxygen, but that's so fascinating. I mean, even if you cut broccoli and you leave it out for 30 minutes, the nutritional profile of that broccoli is different than when it was in its bunch. So there's same with like onions and garlic, because it's all about that oxygen and how that oxygen is also triggering the enzyme activity and changing the profile of that food. So it's something that I don't regularly think about when I purchase a product like Bright Bars, but that's just so fascinating. Like the actual, you got to think this is just like your chemistry class. You're going into a lab, you're bringing a lot of products with you, and you don't know how they're going to interact together. And so that's got to be an exciting part of the process of creating these products.
Yes, that to me is actually probably the most exciting part is the when you're creating and you're creating a brand, you're creating products. Uh, I will also say that that creative process, the product development process, also is one of the most up and down.
Upsetting, night
Yes,
sweats.
yes, glorious when it goes well, and just so soul destroying on the days when it doesn't.
I think it's something I would like to venture into eventually, but trying to juggle too many things right now. So, got to make time for that. But and I know we said at the beginning of this call, we were going to talk about this. How do the specific ingredients in Bright Bars fuel individuals' bodies?
Yeah. So, I mean, you'll be able to speak to the chemistry of it better than I can because of your nutrition background. Um,
Mhm.
at the simplest level, so you think I've got protein, I've got fiber, I've got fruits, veggies, superfoods, and not a lot of sugar. So protein is obviously one of the key building blocks of life. As I mentioned before, we have a complete plant protein or a complete protein, which you can find those in various meats. I believe eggs have a complete plant or complete protein,
Mhm.
but hard to find elsewhere. That's going to help you repair your muscles after a workout. That's going to help you sustain and feel sated in between meals. Fiber, our fiber is unique for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's well, I guess kind of number one is the quantity of it, but then number two is we actually use a prebiotic fiber,
Mm.
which we source from tapioca. So that prebiotic is essentially just food for probiotics, um, and prebiotic fiber also helps your body to run smoothly. And the quantity that we put it into the bars, we found through trial and error was uh, a, an amazing amount to help you feel full, to again kind of help your digestive system work a little bit more easily, but not so much that you felt uh,
Mhm.
bloated, excuse me, because one of the things we found is some of these products have fiber in them in a way where you just feel terrible afterwards.
Oh man,
Uh,
chickpea pasta gets me every time.
Yeah, yeah, chickpeas. I
But
don't
I
know
love
why.
it. But I love
I know, no disrespect to Bonza.
them.
Um, and then we've got our superfood blend. So we're putting in actually apple, banana, coconut, kale, spinach, reishi, and maca. And the idea there is, hey, let's get some antioxidants in there for you. Let's get some of the benefits of green vegetables. And then we talked about adaptogens before. For people who don't know, adaptogens are like kind of like your body's thermostat, as you had alluded to. If you're over a little too hot, they help you to cool down. If you're feeling a little too frazzled, it'll smooth you out. If you're feeling a little sluggish, they can help bring you back up to baseline. So between those things, when you're eating a Bright Bar, you're getting a lot of really great nutrient dense food, which is going to help you repair. It's going to help your body run smoothly. You're going to get this little I call it a healthy cocktail, which is also just going to help your body sort of adjust and get back to a healthy state so you can do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, and from a nutrition standpoint, I do want to also mention that fiber is so important, especially if you have a product, even with a little bit of sugar in it. Fiber really slows down the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream. So it prevents those blood sugar spikes, which cause cravings and crashes and ruin your, energy levels and hurt your gut health. So having that amount of fiber is just really important because it's not bad to have some natural sources of sugar in your food, but you want to balance it out as much as you can. I'm going to start wrapping up this interview because I know you have other things to do other than talk to me all day. But before I get to our quick hit questions, what conventional ingredients are often in bars in the grocery stores that you would just suggest people stay away from?
Yeah, gosh, there are a lot. Um, one of the first ones that comes to my mind is brown rice syrup.
Sugar.
Yeah, and I think the problem is some companies, many companies have that as the first ingredient on their label. And for people who don't know, ingredient labels, or as we call them, ingredient decks, have to be organized by the percentage of the ingredient that's present in the product. So when you have a product like a Cliff Bar, or there's another bar called Go Macro, which is another one of those that really masquerades as being healthy, the first
Hmm.
ingredient is brown rice syrup. So that's just recognize that that's mostly a sugar bar. Um,
And then it'll also say in cane sugar, and it'll also say another sugar. They have like all of these different sugars in these bars masked by different names, but it all does the same thing.
that's right. Your body processes it all as sugar. There are, another example is um, glucose syrup, which you see very often in kind bars, and they'll call it non-GMO glucose syrup. Well, that's still just good old sugar. Uh, there are certain preservatives, which you'll find, and these tend to be in, uh, I think, very mainstream products, but sodium EDTA, or there's a whole list of them that I could walk through. You don't really need to put those things in your body. They're just there to keep that product on the shelf and kind of doing what it needs to do. Um, so a lot of them are basically fillers, preservatives, which get jammed onto labels, um, and yeah, they're really, it's just like you don't need them.
Yeah, I would say probably 98% of the bars in the energy and protein bar category, you probably should just avoid. Just go for the bright bars.
Over the bright bar.
Um, there's your plug for you. The other thing that I always tell friends and family to watch out for too is artificial coloring. I
Yeah,
read a study that just, oh man, just what artificial coloring just gets stuck in your body. And so, drinking all those Gatorades after you play some basketball or you go for a run and that blue coloring, like I just visually imagine fat blue because the artificial coloring, your body doesn't know what that is. It doesn't know
yeah,
what to do with it. So it stores it. And there have been studies that have opened bodies up after they've passed, and it does color the fat inside the body. And I can't, stay away from artificial coloring. Everyone use turmeric. If you want some yellow, use berries. If you want some blues, there's lots of natural options out there.
yeah.
Now, to wrap this up, I would love to. Oh, wait, I wanted to ask if Bright Bars has any plans to expand into other categories. I know that you have already kind of ventured around that, but I did want to ask that question.
Yeah, yeah. Eventually, absolutely. Right now, there are a lot of different areas which are really fertile territory for us. One of the ones that has been cool for me to see is kids. And when I first came up with the idea for Bright Bar, and when I was thinking about the name for it, uh, one of the things I really loved about Bright was that we could go into that. I have two kids, 3.5 and 6, and creating a Bright Kids line is certainly at our future at some point. My younger daughter, who's super picky, eats a peanut butter bar pretty much every single day. And as a parent, you can feel good about it for all the reasons that we've been talking about. Uh, when you've got somebody who's not getting enough protein otherwise, and not getting enough fiber, and not getting fruits and veggies, and then
Well,
there are other areas on the horizon. Yeah, but what we've just come out with right now actually are a couple of exclusive flavors online too. So we've got a peanut butter and jelly, which is amazing. And then for all the thin mint lovers out there, we just came out with a chocolate mint crisp bar, which is just bonkers good. And for listeners of the podcast, if you want to check them out, go to brightfoods.com. You can type in the code Lauren, Lauren, and we'll give you 15% off your first order.
thank you for that. That is so
Of course.
nice. I'm sure I'm gonna go use that code right after this. So hopefully it's working. All right, let's wrap this up with some quick hit questions. What does having a clean body mean to you?
Mm. So a clean body to me um, is when I am feeling at my absolute best, when I'm feeling light and energetic, and sort of like I'm ready to go conquer the world. And it's really, to me, it's post exercise with good fuel. That's kind of when I feel at my cleanest and most energized.
What are a couple, and you've mentioned a lot of them already, but a couple other routine lifestyle and diet habits that you have that you just couldn't live without?
So meditation is a huge one. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I've been meditating twice a day now for probably 4 years. I think I've sat for it's kind of a frightening amount of hours at this point, in the thousands. Um, and meditation is since just to put it very bluntly, but I think it's kind of an effective metaphor. Somebody said to me, it's like flushing the toilet every morning, flushing the mental toilet. It's really, really, really powerful when you're dealing with all sorts of different forces on your life. Cycling and yoga are the other two that are huge for me. Uh, I really like exercising outside, and there's something about being able to go ride, being able to go suffer up a mountain, getting lots of oxygen, which is super restorative. Yoga is a really wonderful counterbalance to that, because cycling is go, go, go. Yoga is, okay, let me kind of settle in. And then I have my go-to foods that are a source of comfort. Obviously, I eat way too many bright bars. Uh, but then there are a host of others which I just keep coming back to time and again, uh, partly for nostalgia and partly because of the way they make me feel.
That's great. Are there any new, not new, but just any well being or wellness trends or practices that you've recently been getting into?
Mm. I've been I've been pretty consistent, uh, and boring with a lot of what I do, but I think the one that I've been experimenting with is just eating a little bit less meat, and there are a few reasons for that, but um, switching over to some of the plant-based meats, or just going more plant-based. Um, Not all the time, but that's the one that I've been just trying to pay more attention to.
Hmm. And what other brands are you currently loving on?
Mm, good question.
Give me
So
ideas about who to reach out to next.
yeah, yeah. I've been drinking Olipop for a while. If you've come across that brand,
Hmm.
and I'm not a soda drinker, like have I not at all. But what I found was they have a lot of prebiotic fiber, 9 grams in there.
Hmm.
It's extremely low sugar. Um, there is a bit of a stevia taste, which take it or leave it. But it was a really nice treat in pandemic times when I just wanted uh, something that was going to lift my mood, but then also had the benefit of, okay, I'm not going to crash with this, And it's actually because it's got the prebiotic fiber in there, going to give me a little bit of steadiness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Trader Joe's, actually. I just think that they go out and they actually find a bunch of brands and then they private label their products.
Yeah, they're
So
smart.
they're really smart. So they have some just really delicious snacks like baby bananas. They have a plantain chip mix, which is great, but that's not going to help you with the interviewing side. Um, let
You
me
don't
think
think
of.
Joe will talk to me?
I'm sure he'll take your
Damn.
call.
That's great. You gotta also try Droplet. Droplet, I'm actually interviewing them for the podcast, and they're an adaptogenic drink. And really delicious. And
Awesome.
they're kind of my treat at night when I'm cooking dinner, because I'm
Nice.
trying no longer to have wine or beer, which I definitely indulged a little too much during 2020. So 2021 is my no longer sober curious, just sober year. So Droplet's a really good substitute for that. But thank you so much for all of this. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so appreciative of what you and Bright Bars are doing. And I hope we can all support you and help you launch into as many categories and as many food items as you could ever dream. But how can listeners get how can they get some Bright Bars? How can they interact with you and the brand? Any other call outs you want to give? This is your time. Take it.
Yeah, yeah. So we are now available nationally at Sprouts, which is huge. You can find us in any Sprouts, and we're actually on sale right now. So if you want to go pick up a bar or three, head over there. You can also find us on Instagram at Eat Bright Foods. We're always running giveaways. We will share with you all sorts of beautiful food photography, things that we find interesting. www.brightfoods.com. You can learn more about us there and order directly. And those, yeah, really are kind of the best ways to go and experience some brightness for yourself.
Awesome. Experience the brightness for yourself. I like it. I'll have all those links in the show notes. And as Brenden so graciously said, 15% off to all listeners. Just use my name, Lauren, at checkout. And you guys can get your hands on some Bright Bars, including those peanut butter and jelly and thin mint flavored ones. I'm definitely going for those. But again, thank you so much, Brenden. I really appreciate your time. And I hope we can continue to collaborate into the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity and enjoyed our talk.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care from a doctor or otherwise qualified health professional. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it is not a replacement for medical or other health-related services, and we take no responsibility for the opinions of the guests we have on the show. If you're looking for help in your journey, seek out a qualified practitioner. You can find all show notes on thecleanbodyproject.com. It'll be right there on the homepage, and we hope to see you for the next episode.